Okay, so in this week's guitar lesson, we're going to talk about how you take a familiar melody and you add your own flair to it or your own embellishments. This is a common thing that happens as a musician. At some point, you're going to be taking a lead break in a song that's got a popular melody, and you want to play the melody, but you also want to maybe add a little bit of embellishment to it. Sometimes the melodies can be somewhat boring and you want to, just add your own little signature to that. And so I'm going to at least talk through my process in this video. We're going to break it all down note for note, what I played in the intro. I'll put the tab up on the screen so you can follow along. If you like to get the extra materials that come with this week's lesson, the MP3 jam track, so that you can practice playing everything. I've actually got it in 2 tempos. I've got a slower version as well. And then there's the tab PDF file, which you can download and print or whatever you want to do with that, and the on-screen tab viewer. You can get those things by going to activemelody.com, go to the weekly lessons page, and do a search for EP493. Okay, so this song is called Up on the Housetop. Now, I knew this is Up on the Rooftop. I thought that was the lyric. I think there's probably other version of it out there. The classic version is Gene Autry's Up on the Housetop. That Christmas album of Gene Autry's is the best. It's sort of like the essential versions of all these Christmas songs. But anyway, that's the song. Every year I do a Christmas thing. If you're new to Active Melody and you didn't know that, you can go to the activemelody.com website, and then I've got a category called, I think it's called Christmas Guitar Songs, or something like that. And I've got many years worth of them. So if you're looking for another one, you can use that. But this year we're going to be doing Up on the Housetop. I have to pick songs from the public domain because I don't want to deal with YouTube and copyrights and all that stuff. And so this one is in the public domain. So I started it off with a little intro, and I just came up with my own. And by the way, we're going to be playing this in the key of A. If you listen to Gene Autry's version, his is in the key of G, I think. But we're going to be doing this in the key of A. It doesn't mean you couldn't play this in any key, though. There's no open strings. You can just move your hand up or down the fretboard and switch keys. But the 3 chords that are used in this are A, D, and E. So it's your 1, 4, 5. And I started with a little intro that goes 4 chord, which is our D, 5 chord, which is our E, and then to the A. And then the verse starts. So it seemed too abrupt to go right into it. It needed some kind of little turnaround or something in the intro. And actually every version you'll hear has a version of that, has some kind of little thing like a tag at the end of a verse or something that they start the song with. So anyway, that's what we're starting with. Actually, let me just play it. You've probably forgotten it by now. I'll play it and then we'll talk about what I was playing there. Okay, so the notes that I'm playing sound like that. It's a little pedal steel thing. I wanted to get that kind of, I don't know, I just, for some reason I was hearing like a Chet Atkins sort of Nashville country kind of vibe in this. It just had like an old school sound. That's just the stuff I like, so maybe that's why that's what I was hearing. But what I'm playing there is really just, it's actually very simple. It comes out of these chord shapes. So I'm starting with the D chord, and if you think about your D chord using the A shape, when you look at the top part of that little triad there, so think about that triad for your D chord, and then just look at strings 1 and 2, that harmonized third there. That's really all this is. I'm just doing a hammer-on into that harmonized third, but you can see where it's coming from now, right? So hopefully in your mind you're connecting, okay, so this represents the D chord. So going forward, if you like that pedal steel kind of lick, wherever you're playing that A chord shape, you can do that hammer-on and that'll represent the chord. It's kind of a cool way to work that into either a rhythm or a lead. So I played that for the D, slid it up 2 frets, did the same thing for the E. Actually, with a few little extra notes there. Lifted my ring finger and then came down to the 9th fret 3rd string. So, and then for the A chord, I came up and played this. Now, I was thinking about the A chord up here, using that D shape. So think of your D chord down in 1st position. If you slide it up so that your middle finger's on the 9th fret, you're playing an A chord up in this position. But what I did was I did the same sort of hammer-on technique. So I'm borrowing the first 2 strings there on the 9th fret, and I hammered on to the 10th fret 2nd string. But you can see where that's coming from. It's coming from that A shape. So you have that for the intro. So what I'm doing here is I'm playing out of this A chord here. Now this is using the E shape. Again, this goes back to the cage system, why I'm such a huge fan of it, because it allows me to visualize and get in areas of the fretboard and know where I'm at. And so to me, when I'm playing, look at the notes there. I'm walking down the notes in the chord. So I can see that A chord there out of that E shape. Now I'm not playing it like that. I'm playing it like this. So I'm borrowing the first 2 strings on the 5th fret and 6th fret 3rd string, and then the 7th fret 4th string. And this may be just the thing you need to hear. You don't have to play all 6 strings when you're playing a bar chord. Just play the top 4. Is there a huge difference in sound? No. In some ways, I could argue that sounds better. It sounds cleaner, especially with a band with a bass player and other instruments. So it took me years to realize that. Like when somebody would show a chord, like a bar chord, I would think, well, that's it. It's very literal. That's the way you make it. No, those are the notes that's one way to do it. But you could play it like this, or you could play it like this. You could pick the ones you want out of it. Anyway, so that's the position we're in. And when I started this, so I'm borrowing that first 2 strings on the 5th fret, and then the melody goes. So as I'm borrowing that, I come up here to the 7th fret 2nd string, and then back to strings 1 and 2 on the 5th fret. So, and then walk down the chord, and then walk back up the chord. So now you can see that melody line is just inside the chord. It's really just, it's almost arpeggiating the chord, just playing the arpeggio of the chord. So that makes it easy if you want to play it in A sharp. All right, whatever key you needed to be in. So anyway, the next thing that happens, actually let me play it. So then the song goes to the D chord, and I played, that's the same little hammer-on as we did in the intro that I just showed you, right? And then little hammer-on pull-off kind of thing here between the 5th fret and 7th fret on the 2nd string. And then I come down to the 6th fret 3rd string. And then the song goes to the E chord. And what I was picturing was the E chord right here, using the D shape. And you're always thinking, once you get familiar with the cage system, this is another thing I love about it, you're thinking in terms of neighborhoods. So to me, I've got my 1, my 4, and my 5 right here, or here. But they're all here. I don't have to jump around and find an E chord down here or somewhere else. It's all right here. I'm always thinking about what's nearby. So and then we come into this position. Think about your D shape. And you can hit the 2 of those together. So if you think about what's going on here is we're creating a little bit of harmony by playing the double stop there. It's more of a fiddle lick or a mandolin type lick where you've got the one note droning out, which is your A note since we're playing over the A chord. So you've got, and then when you go to the D chord, you've got a double stop as well. And then when you come down to this, you've got those 2 notes that you can play. And I think that's how I did it. Just like that. But you know where this is coming from. It's your E chord right here. And once you can see the shapes, it's like, oh, okay, he's really just playing the chords. All right, so this time to play something a little different, I played. So there was a little bit of a chromatic thing happening there. So, and I'll put a lesson up on the screen that I did just a few weeks ago on working chromatics into your blues. And this is an example of that where I'm going, that's the melody, right? But instead of playing it like that, I went and walked it down chromatically from here. I'm trying to get from here to here. But instead of just going straight, you can throw in some of those extra notes along the way. So I played it like that. So the notes then, you're going to start with your middle finger, which will actually already be in position here from from that E chord. But you're going to start with your middle finger, just leave it there on that 5th fret 2nd string, and then use your pinky to come up to that 7th fret 2nd string. And then ring finger here on the 6th fret 3rd string to go to do 6, 5, 4. So you have, and then you can use your ring finger to put your hand back in position to play that A chord again. Now for this chromatic thing, I was walking from here to here. Those are the 2 notes. I could have went like this and walked every note. It's just a timing thing. It didn't work out timing wise. I could have done it like that. But instead I went. It just made it a little easier to skip one of those notes. But hopefully you can see where that's coming from. That's why chromatics are so big, and it's just, you know where you're going, you know the note you're on, and you know the note you're going to. So why not fill in those notes in between? There's nothing wrong with doing that, especially when you're playing a melody that's familiar like this. You already know where it's going. Okay, and then the last time just repeated. We just went the same thing we did the first time. Okay, so now we come into the B part of the song. Maybe you call this the chorus, I'm not sure. It's the ho, ho, ho part, but it goes like this. So we're gonna start with that. So it's, again, we're walking up the chord, just arpeggiating. The only thing I'm doing different that I would call out and just mention is, instead of letting the notes ring, like I'm just picking them out of the chord and just letting it ring out, I truncated them like this. Watch my left hand there. You can see it's bouncing. I'm squeezing to play each note, but then releasing in between. So it's like this. And it's allowing me to control how much that note rings out by my left hand. You call that left hand muting. And I thought that that represented sort of the vocal line a little better than that sound. So we have, and then the next thing goes, so I came up here and barred the first 2 strings, I'm sorry, strings 2 and 3 on the 7th fret, and then down to the 9th fret 4th string. And that would be played over the D chord. But what I'm actually playing, if you look at these notes, that would be like a B minor. And so here's another little sidebar for you. You can play, when you're playing the 4 chord, you can play the 2 chord in its place, and that'll work. If you think about what's going on, these 2 notes are in the 4 chord, and these 2 notes are in your 2 chord. So a lot of times you can substitute that 2 chord for your 4 chord. And so that's kind of what's going on here. So we have, and then it goes to the 5 chord. And what I played for that, I was thinking about my E7 chord right here. Again, staying in the neighborhoods, nearest neighbor. And instead of playing the full chord, I just played strings 4 and 3 out of it. So that's how I played it, is 4, 3, and then the 2 at the same time. And the way I'm fretting that is 6th fret 4th string, 7th fret 3rd string. Now the way that the melody would normally go if we were playing it straight, after this it would go. But that seems so boring. So what I ended up playing was, so it was really just walking down and up a scale. I'll explain the scale in a minute to get to back to where we were going to go anyway. It's just working in that scale instead. And I thought that sounded just a little more, I don't know, just a little more fun. It sounded almost like it was kind of coming undone, but then it kind of comes back into the melody. And so what I'm playing there is just a mixolydian. I'm literally walking down the scale and walking back up. So this A mixolydian scale is your A major scale, but you flat the 7. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. You flat that 7 and you play it here. So now it sounds like this. And I talk about this quite a bit, this mixolydian. This is the Jerry Garcia scale. A lot of people associate that scale with him because he used it a lot. Now, if I'd played that with the A major scale, it just wouldn't have worked. It just sounds too happy or something, versus hear how by flatting that 7, it just sort of, it gives it that little bit of edge and it gives it a little bit of blues. That's why I love that scale so much. So I've got the notes up on the screen so you can follow along with them. Now from here, I'm going to go right back into that arpeggio of the A chord. And then the song ends with the licks you've already learned. There's that little hammer-on pull-off again. We go to the E, and then back to our A. And then there's that, I threw in the intro bit again, so we'll use that intro as a little bridge to get us to the verse each time. So when you're playing along with the jam track, you'll hear that bridge each time. You can do whatever you want there. The second time I actually did something different. Instead of going, I played like this. And so it's the same thing. I'm still playing a D chord, but think about my D chord using the A shape, and I'm only playing strings 4 and 2. It's a harmonized 6th. And then I went to the, slid up into the E, and then slid up into the A. And I was thinking about my A chord up here using the C shape. So in that case, I've got my index finger on the 10th fret 2nd string, and then my middle finger on the 11th fret 4th string. So it's like this. So it's like this. All right, well, those are my ideas for Up on the Housetop. I hope you've got a few ideas from this lesson. Remember, the point isn't to necessarily just memorize. I guess that can be helpful in some situations if you're trying to get a technical thing down, maybe alternate picking or something. So it is good in that respect to memorize a little piece. But the goal of this is to give you ideas so that you can take this stuff and start using it in other things. So I hope you walked away with at least one idea. Maybe it's the chromatic thing. Maybe it was the hammer-on, the pedal steel hammer-on idea or whatever. And if you like this, if you're watching this maybe for the first time, I repeat myself a lot in these videos. I use the same licks and same ideas over and over again. And some of that's just because that's just what I know. And then some of it is I know it's good instructional design to do that. When you hear something, you're sort of reinstating something that you've heard before. A lot of times we forget things. You learn something, but then you sort of forget about it and you're reminded of it. That's always a good thing. So anyway, I hope you've walked away with at least one idea. And if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, I would encourage you to do that. Just hit the subscribe button and then the alert bell, and then we can stay in touch, and I'll put out new lessons every week and you'll know when that happens. All right, we'll see you next week for something new.